The protagonist thought that if this continues, he will lose all points of affection. This will not work. He felt it was necessary to take a chance. He asked Chairman Zhao if she knew about the very first rich man. The girl shouted that they were talking about his betrayal now, and not about some movie. Chen said he was the rich man. He took a lighter and lit a cigarette, which surprised her. He noted that she must know that he was not from a simple family, and he asked her if she had ever wondered why he was content with such an ordinary life. There is an unspoken rule in his family, according to which the heir, upon reaching the age of 18, must spend 1 billion yuan in a month in order to inherit all 50. Therefore, he diligently spends money and invites everyone to invest in their project, investments, charity, various environmental initiatives. He had already come up with a plan to migrate the polar glaciers so that ships would not crash into them. And this girl is the streamer he fucked. All this is just because he has to play this game. He approached her and took her hand and assured her that no one else was aware of the case. He doesn't expect her to understand. It's just that this mystery has been weighing on him for so long. He walked away from her and assured her that he was just tired. Yuki thought she was so stupid. He's trying so hard, and all in order to become the heir. And she doubted him. Because of this realization, she began to cry. She watched as the protagonist walked away from her. Immediately, she ran up to him and hugged him from behind, shouting that she did not want to part with him. She asked him not to leave, because she was wrong. The protagonist accepted her words and took her hand. She also understood that he had even opened up to her on such a delicate matter as family matters. She thought he really loved her. Her disposition has increased by 20 points and has already reached 92 points in total. After that, they show us again the posh restaurant where they arrived. The protagonist and Zhao went out together and the girl apologized. She was a little out of her mind. Chen Yuan's friends are her friends and she treats them. Lan was surprised, because only 5 minutes in such a change of mood, he thought that Chen was incredibly cool. Xiaomir was upset and angry. She didn't understand what she was making of herself and she would still see who would get the protagonist. They all sat down at the table and the girls looked at him. Lan noted that the two beauties were around Nai Chen and he didn't know if he could handle it. Xiaomir noted that Chen had not yet introduced this girl to her and she asked who she was. Yuki Zhao laughed that Xiaomir referred to him by his nickname Lone Wolf. The girl added that he didn't even tell her his real name, but she calls him brother. She's betting that Chen is younger than her. Lan imagined this fight as a confrontation between a phoenix and a crane. He felt an incredible power. It's not just not an equal fight, it's a real beating. 1:39. Zhao Yuki looked like a real phoenix goddess. Liao Zir understood this and was therefore very angry. Immediately, food was brought to them and the protagonist tapped his chopsticks on the plate. He asked them to calm down, because it was time to eat, and he was already hungry. The girls glared at each other. Immediately, they turned away in silence and clicked. Lan was surprised that they wouldn't even swear and thought that the methods were, of course, terrifying. One of the most popular shark streamers, a real thunderstorm of wallets. Another famous beauty of the city with high origins. Lan thought that Chen must have some kind of special charm technique. He considered him a real tempting demon. He used to be impressed solely by his wealth, but now he has become his spiritual idol. He shouted that he wanted to be as cool as him, and the protagonist was surprised. After that, evening had already come and the protagonist was in the university courtyard. He noted that this restaurant was not cheap, but he was glad that he didn't have to pay. Speaking of money, he decided to look at his progress. There are 80,000 in total. We remove 0 and we get 8,000. Lan did not understand what kind of machinations they were. He successfully certified past contracts with the girls. We are shown that Zhao Yuki's disposition was 91, completion reward, 25 gain points and piano playing skill. Xiaomir's disposition is 92, completion reward, 25 gain points and dancing skill. The protagonist understood that the level of affection of these two was already quite high. It must be that progress would be tremendous. Immediately, the protagonist noticed another girl and was surprised. He didn't even realize when she had just made it. It was Yi Zhiling. The protagonist remembered her. It was Lai Yong's girlfriend. Her disposition was already 76. Completion reward, 22 gain points and dancing skill. He remembers for sure that he was 25 years old. A few days have passed and now he sees such a figure. Was he really that attractive in her eyes? Right there, two guys ran by the protagonist and laughed. The first one said that he had heard someone confessing their love downstairs, and the fat man laughed and thought it was a knight on a white horse. The protagonist overheard all this. When I heard the words about the knight on the white horse, I thought it was interesting. Someone near the door made a heart shape out of candles and sang a song. He apologized for hurting her. He didn't want to see her cry. He had always loved only her. The guy on the guitar continued to sing and play until a lot of people had already gathered around him. It was Lai Yong. He held out a bouquet of flowers and noted that he was mistaken. He shouldn't have been so cold to her. He asked her to remember how good they were together and asked her to give him a chance. Everyone in the background wanted her to forgive him. He Jiwing was angry about all this, as people suggested to her. The protagonist came and saw Lai Yong. He thought it all looked so awkward and did not understand what kind of cheap performance it was. Immediately, he noticed the protagonist and was delighted. 1:40. The girl threw back the bouquet of the protagonist. She didn't care about Yong and ran to Chen. He started crying and shouting the girl's name. He didn't understand where she was going because he was here. She stood in front of the protagonist and asked if his name was Chen Yuan. She finally met him again. She noted that she was incredibly lucky today, which surprised Chen. Jiwon handed over the phone and asked him to add her to the chat. She asked me to just add a contact and not refuse her. People were surprised and didn't understand what was going on here. They didn't understand if she had another man. Here it is, pure and sincere love. Jan was in a lot of pain, and as a man he lost. He was very angry and did not understand what was wrong with this Chen Yuan. He won't put up with it. He will remember this He Jiwang. The protagonist looked at Jan and understood everything. Chen approached him and noted that now he was thinking that he would never come to terms with what had happened. He could not understand how. And it is believed that He Jiwang has 7 Fridays in practice. Jan did not understand what all this meant and thought that he was also trying to mock him. The protagonist replied that he was actually jealous of him. He is handsome and well-built physically. He easily won the hearts of women. He really deserves their attention. But as soon as he realized that he was no longer the center of attention, he got lost. Winning was what was important to him. But he stubbornly ignored the feelings of his soulmate, which made He Jiwang very sad. He pushed her away himself, and then she cried. And now he's making that pathetic appearance again. He asked if he didn't think he was just being ridiculous. He was surprised by his words. Immediately, he realized that Chen was right and he had brought this upon himself. The girls split into 2 camps. Some were angry that he cheated on him, while others replied that he ignored her himself. Some people thought that when they were together, he didn't pay enough attention to her, so he actually wants to now. It was as if He Jiwang had been struck by lightning. She blushed because she realized that Chen understood her. Its location has grown to 91 points. Yuki's friend saw Chen Yuan and did not understand what kind of relationship they were in with He Jiwang. She got angry and said she needed to go back and tell Kiki everything. After that, they show us the women's dorm again, and the lights were on in one room. Immediately, Xiao Fei flew into the room and shouted at Yuki that Chen was cheating on her, and Zhao even screamed out of fright when she was making a face mask for herself. 1:41. Yuki asked Xiao Fei to stop saying that, because Chen Yuan is not capable of such a thing. A friend told him that a girl had just confessed her feelings to him downstairs. They stood there and made eyes at each other. The girl turned around and told Xiao that Chen couldn't control other people's feelings, and the words don't mean anything. Xiao Fei was surprised by her words. She pointed at the phone and asked Yuki how she would explain it. The protagonist spent fabulous money on other girls. Yuki understood her and said that they had talked about it. In fact, he spent much more than that miserable 30 million. Xiao Fei asked. He said he was transferring money to other streamers. Yuki agreed and said that their relationship is based on trust. He believes her and she believes him. Is it strange? It's not a big deal. Xiao Fei doesn't have a partner, so it's hard for her to understand what kind of spiritual connection she's talking about. Xiao Fei was surprised by her words and felt like a knife went through her heart. Yuki left her singing a song. And Xiao noted that she was so good, but so stupid. She didn't understand how Chen Yuan could do this. After that, we are shown the protagonist, who was yawning. Immediately, his friend told Chen to concentrate, because he couldn't fall asleep. The protagonist replied that he was not going to come at all, he forced him to. The girl asked Xingtao why he was so loud, because he was the only one scaring Chen Yuan. She added that they liked the look of a sleepy Chen Yuan, and asked why he had woken him up. She asked if everything was okay and if he was free tonight. Another noted that Chen was tired and she wanted to treat him to a cup of latte. Xingtao said that the girls said they would not come if he was not there. He would never understand them, the simple guys. He pointed his finger at the other girl and asked her to explain to him what she was doing here. She was the ex-girlfriend of the protagonist Tun Tun. She was reading the text. Her name is Xiao Kiwi. She left her lover and ran away with the son of a rich man and then died, but she thinks she fully deserved it. There is no need to look for the killer. The teacher asked her to calm down, because if she continued to cry, they would not be able to continue. Xingtao replied that Lin Shudong had found out that he would be here. That's how I got involved. He asked what he had done to her, because he had heard that she had recently been to the doctor. The protagonist felt that he seemed to have gone a little overboard with her. She really hurt him, but after what happened, she really seemed to repent. The protagonist wondered if she was to blame, but she didn't deserve to die for it. He asked himself if he was really that heartless. Immediately, one girl turned to the protagonist and said that there were rumors around the university that he was the rich lone wolf and asked if it was true. Another replied that it was true, because he had the same nickname. The protagonist was surprised and decided to answer, but Lin Shudong was confused and eavesdropped. Immediately, someone did not let the protagonist answer and said that if Chen Yuan was really the lone wolf, then he would tear off his head and play football with it and laugh. The lone wolf spent about 100 million in the shark, and he's baking for every coin. The protagonist recognized him and asked if it was really him. He took Lin Shudong and greeted her. His name is La Yuntao. He's the owner of this store. He noticed her a long time ago and asked if he would share the chat. The girl was confused and did not know what to answer, and blushed violently. 1-42. The protagonist remembered that this La Yuntao was his sworn enemy in high school. Relying on his family's wealth and influence, he never shied away from such methods. He was constantly beating him, and not only alone, but also in a crowd. Liu deliberately provoked the protagonist to aggression. The protagonist decided to let him show off. It's lucky for him that Chen doesn't want to show off too much in front of his classmates. He's just going to give her some kind of checkup. The protagonist stood next to La Yuntao and decided to introduce his rich friend to them all. They studied together in high school. He studies at 985 universities, runs his own company, owns assets worth tens of millions. It can be said that he is the deity of wealth. Everyone was surprised by his words, in particular Lin Shudong, who blushed deeply. The protagonist spoke about himself. He's really not the lone wolf they're cooking about. He just received a small compensation for the renovation of an apartment building. About 3 to 5 million, that's all. Li reflected that the protagonist has property worth tens of millions. Lin Shudong was surprised that Chen Yuan was not a lone wolf and realized that she was mistaken. On the one hand, the best student from the university is 985, with a fortune in the tens of millions. On the other hand, someone she likes, but not particularly rich. Lin Shudong's disposition quickly began to fall down. The system reported that he was no longer an object of worship. Its location is now 15 points, and the protagonist was delighted. The girl agreed with Li and gave him the phone. She smiled maliciously and thought that even a fool would make the right choice. Li turned to the protagonist and showed how it happens in this world. His girlfriend just gave him her WeChat and laughed in his face. He approached him and added that last time he beat him up just like a stray dog, and now he's just going to run him over. The protagonist was shocked by his words. He told the guy that he and this Chen Yuan were classmates. He was very pleased with him today. Everything is free for this table today, and that guy agreed. The protagonist covered his face and started laughing hard. The protagonist's friend asked what was wrong with him. Shen replied that everything was fine. It was just a sudden epiphany. Looking at Lin Shudong, who was wearing makeup, he thought that he had given her the opportunity to fix everything. But who is to blame for the fact that she cannot overcome herself? From now on, he won't even show a minimum of empathy towards her, because she doesn't deserve it. Li waited for the protagonist at the exit and asked if he was already leaving. Tomorrow, he and his former classmates are going to Jeju and asked if he would like to join. The protagonist was surprised that there would be a graduation party tomorrow and looked back. He thanked him for the invitation and assured him that he would definitely be there. 1-43. After they show us that they have already gathered in Jeju 888, someone said that they had not seen each other for 100 years and decided to drink to themselves. Liu stood up and told everyone to eat and drink. All expenses are on him. He's not going to skimp on them today. After all, money is for spending it and laughing. The girls thought he was so generous and thanked him, and the guy said it was good old Yuntao, and since childhood, he saw potential in him. Liu replied that it was not worth such pleasantries. It was better to let them say a few kind words about him when Joyu came. The guy understood who Mr. Lai was expecting. He asked him not to worry, because he and Xiao Royu are the perfect couple. Talented, beautiful, and from a good family, they will help. The protagonist also felt that this rooster would not miss a single opportunity to show off. Immediately, the door opened. I'm showing you Xiao Royu herself, who apologized for making them wait so long, and Liao Jia was behind her. Xiao Royu said that the personal driver went on vacation, but the taxi took a little longer than usual. Immediately, the protagonist looked at her and thought that she was a ray of sunshine that illuminated his path all 3 years of high school. So mysterious and noble, like an incredibly complex equation that's crazy. The guys were constantly fighting over the girl and shouting that no one should touch her. Immediately, the protagonist smiled and decided to act. He approached her and noted that they had not seen each other for a long time and asked if she would like to share a chat for further communication. Liu began to get angry and considered him a lousy dog who was climbing up to his girlfriend, and therefore wanted to teach him a lesson. The girl agreed to his request and agreed. She assumed that she had not met this man and that they did not know each other. Immediately, the system reported that the object was successfully connected, its attractiveness index 9.2. Location at the moment, 0 points. After Royu becomes his fan, he will receive 35 points. Prize skill, knowledge of 4 languages. Liu was shocked, because Chen Yuan had not been very persistent before, but now he suddenly became so cool. Liu Jia was surprised by his words, and told him that he was asking to be friends with the sons of rich people and then just chase them. And she asked if it was cool. She got up from the table and asked if he thought she didn't know. He's stalking several people from wealthy families. He even dragged Liu Wenj into it. They're all glorified scumbags. He has no idea how many innocent girls they've screwed over. Immediately, a guy decided to stand up for the protagonist and said that this was obviously some kind of nonsense. Liu Jia shouted that it was true. Liu Wenj just played with her feelings and threw them away like an unnecessary toy. After parting, he immediately found another one. Now her heart is broken and she started crying. Some people started to get angry and said that he was some kind of bastard and were sure that Chen had taken Xiao Royu's contact and would now sell it to one of these scumbags. The girls tried to calm Liu Jia down and told her not to cry, because such men are not worth it. They also added that they did not want to sit at the same table with such a person. Xiao Royu's disposition dropped to minus 10 points. Liu told the protagonist that if he didn't have enough money, he could help him. He has a job for everyone. After all, he is also the son of rich parents. It is better to work with him than with such people. At least he earns money in an honest way, and had a laugh. The protagonist thought that Liu Jia had decided to accuse him of all mortal sins, and Lai Yuntao was right there. He realized that they had conspired and that if this information was not refuted, it would spread everywhere. He thought they had dug a hole for themselves this time and picked up the phone. He texted Zhang Nuotian to bring his LaFerrari to the entrance of Jeju restaurant. 1:44. After that, they finished dinner. People said they didn't expect anything less from a 4-star restaurant. It was incredibly delicious. They thanked Li for the treat. The protagonist's friend noted that no matter what anyone says, money is important in their time. Yuntao is so solid with them at once. Another asked where they were going next. Lai felt that Chen and Liu Wenj would not even dare to look anyone in the eye now and that this was a victory. Lai immediately turned to Royu and said that he could take her home. Today he will become her personal driver, and there's no way he's going on vacation. The girl was embarrassed and replied that it was not necessary at all. Immediately, a guy came up to Li and said that he was just looking for him. He asked if he could repark the car. Li got angry because of his words. He replied that he pays money for food and service, and he can park his car. It's just nonsense. The guy explained that these were the rules. After 21, their parking spaces are only available for VIP guests. One of these guests is currently waiting, so he asked him to grant his request. Li was surprised and wanted to see how VIP he was. Li walked over to his car, where there were many other cars. He leaned against the car and noted that now they would find out who they had with such habits. Immediately they saw LaFerrari. More than 20 million. He had only seen one like it at car shows. Zhang Huotian from Zhang Group came out of it. Li was embarrassed, because he didn't think it was him. Jia is known in the upper circles of the children of rich people. Fortunately, he did not confront him. Immediately, he shook Chen's hand, which shocked Lai. The protagonist thanked director Zhang for making him travel so far. He replied that there were no problems. They're brothers, after all, and it's an honor for him to bring his car. Lai shouted that it was Chen Yuan's car, and he didn't understand why Zhang Huotian was so polite to him. The girl was surprised that the protagonist was so rich and asked if he wasn't just following the rich. Shen Liu's friend was delighted that they had finally woken up and assured him that he could buy a dozen cars like Yuntao. The protagonist wanted to introduce Zhang to one of his former classmates. He is also a fairly well-off person. Immediately, the girls asked Liu Jia what she was talking about at all, and realized that she was just trying to humiliate Chen Yuan, and Liu Jia herself did not know what to answer. Roy realized that Lai Yuntao and Liu Jia were just trying to slander Chen Yuan. She also considered the protagonist to be a really noble and well-mannered person, because he did not even try to justify himself. She found him a very interesting guy and her disposition grew to 10 points. The protagonist saw this and smiled. He approached her and asked Xiao Royu if she would let him give her a ride. The girl agreed with a smile on her face. They got into the car and sped down the road, and all the remaining girls thought that Chen Yuan was so cool and handsome, and therefore they were jealous. Liu immediately turned to Zhang and said that he had once said that the gap between some people is greater than between people and stray dogs, which made Lai Yuntao very angry. 1:45. The protagonist and the girl were driving along a busy night road. The girl, looking at Chen, realized that she had acted recklessly. They've only known him for a little while, but I already jumped into his car and wondered if he was bad. Immediately, the protagonist turned to her and said that he had noticed something. This is the keychain on her purse, Ultraman. The girl was surprised that he knew who it was and blushed. The protagonist replied that he liked Ultraman too. He especially liked Dick. He thinks his transformation form is the coolest. Xiao Royu said that she thinks the same way. She has watched it since she was a child. Unfortunately, none of her friends then shared her interests. The protagonist looked at the girl, which made her embarrassed. Zio turned away and pouted in embarrassment. After that, a smile appeared on her face and she blushed. The protagonist was surprised that Zio Royu could be so active and lively. He didn't know if the eternally distant and indifferent expression on her face was her mask. It's like a defense mechanism. Looking at her happy face, I want to protect this beauty. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was in love. After that, the protagonist arrived right at her house. The protagonist made a strange gesture with his hands and said that he was very glad to get to know her from this, so different from the usual side. The girl repeated this gesture and asked to be called simply Joyu and thanked him for giving her a ride. Then they looked at themselves in silence and stood in strange poses. After that, they started laughing at it. He started to leave, and the girl thought that Chen was very interesting. He does not consider her infantile and naive, not like these fat old men. After that, the girl entered her home. Immediately, her mother asked her where she had been all this time and if she had seen the time at all. The girl, taking off her shoes, wanted to explain herself. She walked past her mother and her mother asked her what she thought about that date. The mother replied that she was aware that her father's company was not doing well, and therefore the investments of the Khan family were more important to them than ever. They can't do anything about it. Tears appeared in the girl's eyes and shouted that no one cares about her happiness at all. She didn't understand why she should marry this playboy from the Han family. The mother was surprised by her question and answered because they raised her. She eats, dresses, has fun, lives for their money. If her father's company comes to an end, then so will their family. Immediately, the father began to descend from the second floor. The mother said that Han Xiaogang is really not the best partner, but he is at least the best of the worst. Men take up their heads after marriage. The mother asked if Xiao wanted her to kneel down and beg her. The girl started crying and replied that she knew everything. Immediately, tears fell right on that Ultraman figurine. 1:46. After that, the protagonist watched the news on his phone. Someone was buying himself a new watch, and a new streamer appeared. Immediately, someone mentioned everyone so that everyone would look sooner. He was wondering what Zhang Huotian was doing. There was news that a date arranged by the parents, and immediately an engagement. A strong alliance or fierce competition. Is the Zio family's company on the verge of collapse? Zio Royu will marry Han Xiaogang. The protagonist was surprised and did not understand what else it was. He was surprised that Zio Royu was getting married. He remembered all the times he had seen her. Even when I was still a schoolboy and looked at a girl from the window. He liked her a lot and that's why he panicked a little. Chen clenched his fist tightly and firmly decided to act. This time, he will no longer take a passive position. He will no longer be just an observer. Immediately, the woman asked the guy if it was Chen Yuan. The guy replied that it was him, just like in the video. Short-sleeve t-shirt, huge shorts. The girl immediately put her hand in front of him, which surprised him. The woman greeted him. Her name is Sheng Shui and asked how he would like to be featured on the internet. She also gave him her business card, Sheng Shui's dream media company. The protagonist walked forward and said he wasn't interested, but thanked him for the offer. Sheng was surprised by his words. She noted that he rejected the offer so decisively and wondered if he had already signed a contract with another company, so she needed to change tactics. Sheng Shui ran after him and asked him to wait. They are a serious, stable company. They can offer him a good salary. Immediately, she caught up with him and stood in front of him and completed what was most important. Their company is actively supported by a lone wolf, the same rich man who distributes money on the Shark platform. If he doesn't sign a contract with them, a lone wolf will be able to block his way into the media sphere. The protagonist realized that she was a very nasty madam. And why does he mention the lone wolf at all? This is who this lone wolf couple is and she dares to threaten him with it. The woman came up to him and asked if he agreed. The protagonist realized that this lady thinks that he can't answer her in any way. He picked up the phone and started typing something. If he can't, it doesn't mean that others can't. Sheng and her assistant were surprised. The protagonist wrote to the rich people's chat that he needed help. He asked if anyone was familiar with the Dream Media Company. Here a lady named Sheng Shui is trying to threaten him using his own name. He asks you to help him figure it out. Immediately, one guy replied that Chen should provide it to him. In Seoul, they will generally forget that there was a woman with that name. After that, the protagonist put the phone away and a little time passed. The woman leaned over to seduce him and asked if he had thought it over carefully. Immediately, her boss started calling her on the phone and she was surprised. She took the call and he started yelling at her that she was a crazy woman and should come back to him on the carpet. He asked if she even thinks before doing such a thing. The woman was very scared and did not even know what to answer. Immediately, Chen began to run further. He did not understand how the Han group dared to take away his woman. Now he would show them all. 1:47. After that, We are shown how the mother told Joyu that this was just a date with the heir of the Han family, and that she should not be so sour. The two of them were sitting in the car, and she added that the situation of their family's company leaves much to be desired. Her father experienced such stress, running and asking for help from everyone and everything. And now the Khan family is ready to help them, and they don't demand much in return. They should just make friends. This Han Xiaogang seems like a pretty humble guy. They just need to make contact. Immediately, the girl received a new message and she reached for the phone. The protagonist wrote to her and asked where she was. The girl replied that she was going to the Royal Hotel for family business. The protagonist understood her and replied that when she arrived, she should tell him the exact location and wait for him. Royu was surprised and did not understand how she knew Chen Yuan. The girl thought about it, because if you compare with this stupid Han Xiaogan, Chen Yuan is much more handsome. She blushed a little from her thoughts. Her father immediately called her and said that he had never asked her for anything, but now he was asking her to be understanding about what was happening, and asked if she would help him. The girl silently thought about it, but then she replied that she understood her father. After that, they show us the same hotel. The car drove up there and they were already being met. All three got out of the car and were greeted. They also said that Director Khan was waiting for them in conference room 305 and they should follow him. After the four of them went forward, the guy noted for himself that he had heard before that the daughter of the Xiao family was an incredible beauty, but it was better to see once than hear 100 times. It's really interesting. He was sorry that soon young Mr. Khan would leave nothing of her. Immediately, the girl noticed her father's suitcase and was embarrassed. She didn't understand, because it was just a meeting, so why would he need so many documents? After that, they went into the office and the man asked them to come in. Director Han greeted Director Xiao and told Xiao Gang to make tea for the guests. After all, they are almost one family already. Immediately, the girl noticed one document. These were an agreement on marital property, as well as a prenuptial agreement for real estate and an agreement on the transfer of shares. She realized that this was not just a meeting. She also thought that her father was up to something. 1-48. Han Corporation is one of the largest corporations in Seoul. They own a lot of companies and are associated with shadow industries. At the helm of the company is Han Sushui, who is famous for his roguishness and desire for profit. Sushui told Royu that she had grown up and become a wonderful woman. Joyu thanked the man for the compliment and wrote to the protagonist that she was in room 305. Han Xiaogang immediately came up to her and noted that she was there too. He hadn't been able to sleep or eat since their last meeting. She came to him in his dreams. He also took her hand and added that she should not worry. His father will help her family overcome any difficulties. The girl pulled out her hand and thanked him in embarrassment. He took hold of her back and asked her to be a little more polite. After all, they are almost one family, and grabbed the left bun. The girl threw his hand away and asked angrily, "How dare he? Who wants to be a family with him?" and ordered him to take his hands off. Her father turned to her and asked how she was talking to Xiaogang, and noted that it was rude. The girl started to get angry, but she couldn't say anything to her father. He turned to Director Khan and assured him that his daughter was not intelligent enough, so it was not worth paying attention to her. She really thinks that she and Xiaogang are perfect for each other, and laughed. Han Sushui laughed and asked him to sit down and take a look at the documents. The guy said that this is a share transfer agreement. He will be able to get acquainted with the additions in detail. According to the agreement, the Han family will transfer 100 million to Xiao Corporation for the purchase of 20% of shares, provided that Royu becomes Xiaogang's legitimate wife. 100 million yuan will be gradually transferred to his company's account. As for her daughter, the last transfer will take place after Joyu gives birth to the heir of the Han family. The girl was very surprised. Immediately, the girl snatched the document. She read it and was surprised that they were talking about marriage and children here, and assured that this would not happen. The girl began to sob and shouted that her father had deceived her. He just wanted to sell his daughter. The mother asked Royu to calm down a little. The girl shouted that she did not want to calm down. She didn't understand. If they have business problems, they are even ready to sacrifice their daughter's life. And they should not pretend that they are not aware that Xiaogang indulges in gluttony, drunkenness, debauchery, and gambling. There's no way she's going to marry him. Immediately, the father hit his daughter. She was as surprised as possible by this. 1-49. Her father shouted that she was a spoiled child. Their family has problems, but she still thinks only about herself. He did not understand why he was being punished. The girl was surprised by her father's words and was shocked. Her mother told Royu that she had to understand her father. He's doing all this for their family. She's always been a sensible girl. If the Yuanheng Corporation falls, so does their family. Royu turned around and asked how she could. If the company has problems, why not make a little more effort to get this crisis over? She, mother and dad, they can do it together. Immediately, the mother fell to her knees. She took her daughter's hand and began to beg her. She asked me to take pity on her poor mother. Everyone in the room was surprised, including Joyu. Immediately, the daughter asked what she was doing and asked her mother to get up. She replied that she had no choice. They're desperate. If she does not agree to this marriage, she will not rise. Royu was surprised and didn't know what to say. Xiaogang told Royu that he really liked her very much and just had to accept his offer. He promised that he would get a star from the sky for her, and he asked her to look at her mother, what she had brought her to. The girl did not know if this was her fate. Being born into such a family implies a certain responsibility, and imagined that she was like in a cage. Royu said that she agreed and asked her mother to stand up and make it so. The mother praised her daughter. The father noted that he was overreacting. She understands, and she shouldn't take his words to heart. She's their only daughter. Sometimes they can let their emotions run wild. Han Sushui lit a cigar and said that since there were no more objections, they should continue with Director Zio's contract. The man agreed with him and replied that contact is the most important thing. Sushui replied that the sooner they sign, the sooner the wedding will take place, and the money will be credited to their account. Han Xiaogang licked his lips thinking about her words that she looked down on him and did not want to become his wife. He wondered what kind of proud and arrogant woman would be in bed and laughed. They all started the contract signing procedure. The protagonist immediately appeared and knocked down the door, saying that someone here was trying to kill him. Royu turned around and was surprised. Also, everyone else in the room looked at him in surprise. 1-50. Chen the Angry asked which of them was the lucky groom major. He was so brave and wanted to check everything out. Joyu saw the protagonist and was glad that he really came. Immediately, Han Xiaogang ran at him and asked where the bastard came from and asked if he was tired of living. The protagonist hit him and even knocked out his teeth. Xiaogang just flew away and hit the chairs. The protagonist said that he was incompetent and could complain to daddy. Xiaogang didn't understand how he dared to hit him. The guards immediately appeared and also asked how he dared to hit the young gentleman and wanted to die. Another guard asked if he knew which people he had broken into and was now considered a corpse. The protagonist was surprised by their words and replied that there are two old men here. One wants to sell his daughter and the other buys her. He added that they should only try to touch him. He will make sure that their Han family disappears from Seoul forever. Immediately, Han Sushui stopped his guards. He understood that the deal with the Zio family was strictly confidential. The public and those close to them think that this is just a date organized by their parents. This guy not only knows what's going on here, but also had information on how to find them. He knew it wasn't that simple. Sushui told the protagonist that he did not know his last name, but would be happy to pay him a visit when the schedule allows. The protagonist replied that he did not think he had enough competence for this. Xiaogang shouted, "How dare he talk like that?" The father shouted at his son to shut his mouth. He didn't bring him up enough. I have to think 3 times before I say it and stay out of adult conversations. The protagonist asked Joyu not to worry, because he would help her family. The girl was delighted and agreed with him. The protagonist grabbed the contract and Father Royu was outraged because of this. He asked him if he wanted to sell her for 100 million and noted that he underestimated his daughter. 20% of the company's shares. It's because of old age or problems with the head. The protagonist tore up the contract and said that they would do the following. He will give him 500 million and buy 60% of the shares. Everyone was surprised by this amount. Sushui calculated that in order to be able to cash out such an amount, the company's revenue must be above 10 billion. He reads people like open books, but he can't understand this guy, so he thought it was weird. My father figured that with 500 million he could not only revive the company, but even expand it. The protagonist added that, of course, he would give such money not just for beautiful eyes. He has a requirement. Immediately, he pointed his finger at the girl, which surprised her. She thought he wanted to buy her for 500 million. 1-51. She dropped her bag in shock. She also fell to the floor herself and assumed that he was the same as all of them. He also believes that he is just a commodity that can be sold and bought at his discretion and began to cry. The protagonist said that 60% of the corporation's shares should be transferred to Zio Roy. This is his condition. As soon as this is documented, 500 million will be credited to the account. The girl was very happy. She imagined that the bird cage was open, and the swallow flew out of the cage. She believed that real heroes really exist. Chen Yuan is her hero. Roy began to cry with happiness and her disposition quickly grew. At the moment, the location was 85 points. Immediately, the guy informed Chen that a new contract had been prepared and he had to sign here. The protagonist also asked Joyu to sign. No one else will be able to tell her what to do. The girl was very confused and did not know what to say. He and she signed everything and 500 million yuan was credited to the parents' account. The mother informed her husband that the money had arrived, and therefore the two began to rejoice. The man asked Chen if this was really his requirement. The protagonist agreed and asked why he asked. He leaned over to him and added that he was thinking about the prosperity and decline of their company. If in the future they force Royu to do what she doesn't want, he will show them what a fine line there is between these concepts, and also what real agony is. He was greatly surprised by these words. After that, Chen said that they were done here and could leave with Royu. Han Sushui immediately replied that his handwriting was amazing. He is delighted. His son allowed himself to offend him, and he asked for forgiveness for him and asked that he not hold a grudge against him. Sushui noted for himself that he transferred 500 million without batting an eye. Only the richest people in the country could do something like this. He understood that this man was rich and influential, and therefore it was not worth entering into a confrontation with him. Han Soyagai shouted to his father that Chen had started it first. Sushui slapped him and told him to shut up, calling him an ungrateful child. All the greatness and funds of the Khan company will go down the drain if they fall into the hands of such an idiot. The protagonist and Joy left, and the father wanted to give his son a good spanking. After that, they left the building. The girl got into his car and thanked him for saving her. The protagonist replied that everything was fine, because this was not the first time. He himself wanted to turn on the music, but for some reason it did not turn on.